good. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. Inshallah, we're going to get started and hopefully the rest of our people will join. But in the meantime, I would like to welcome you all to this program. It's an honor to have you all here. And today we are here together with Dr. Hassan Abbas to talk about his great new book, The Prophet's Heir. It's an amazing book about the life and legacy of one of Prophet Muhammad's closest confidants and his true brother, companion, and successor. And what we're planning to do today is to kind of get a better idea of who this great personality is and why he is celebrated, not just among the Shia community, but also Sunnis, Sufis, and non-Muslims even, who have written books and books about who he is and what he did during his time, which has also left a legacy on the world now and how it's functioning today. So to give a bit of a background on our great speaker for today, Dr. Hassan Abbas is a distinguished professor of international relations at the Near East South Asia Strategic Studies Center at the National Defense University in Washington, D.C. He serves as a senior advisor at Harvard University's program on Shiism and Global Affairs at Weatherhead Center of International Affairs, and his current research work focuses on building narratives for countering political and religious extremism and the rule of law reforms in developing states. So kind of a bit of a background, he earlier has served as professor and department chair at the National Defense University's College of International Security Affairs and is the distinguished Quaid-e-Azam professor at Columbia University. He's also held various fellowships, including at Harvard Law School's Islamic Legal Studies program and the program on negotiation. Also the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, Asia Society in New York as Bernard Schwartz Fellow, and as a Carnegie Fellow at the New America Foundation. He has also had several appearances on various television news shows, including CNN, Fox News, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, The NewsHour with Jim Lehrer, Charlie Rose Show, MSNBC, C-SPAN, and various programs on CBS and NBC as an analyst on security-related issues in South Asia and the Middle East. And he's also been interviewed for many news stories and analyses for the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, Los Angeles Times, and The Guardian. Dr. Abbas has also testified before the Foreign Relations Committee, the US House of Representatives, on women fighting for peace, lessons for today's conflicts, and before the US Commission on International Religious Freedom at the Congress on protecting houses of worship and holy sites. This was in 2019, and he also delivered many keynote addresses in conferences and seminars, including in Australia, Azerbaijan, China, India, Iraq, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the UAE, and the United Kingdom. And just a bit of a background on some of his other publications, Dr. Abbas, he has also written The Taliban Revival, Violence and Extremism in Pakistan, and this is from the Afghanistan Frontier, Pakistan's Nuclear Bomb, A Story of Defiance, Deterrence, and Deviance. This was Oxford University Press. And most recently is the book we are talking about today, The Prophet's Heir, The Life of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Dr. Abbas and start with the first question we have in mind, and that is, where did the idea of starting this book first come to you?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much. I'm delighted and honored to be with this group. I'm slightly jet lagged, having just returned from Najaf 3 or 4 hours ago. So I hope I'll be able to respond articulately. So the idea of the book, there's no one incident or event that triggered it, but it has been a realization for quite some time, many years, that whichever book I picked provided me an insight, or book on Imam Ali alayhi salam that I picked, provided me a good insight. But then I thought, Shias are writing for books which are meant for Shias, and the Sunnis are writing for books which are meant for the Sunni audience. Among the books written by the Sunni scholars, so often Saqifa is mentioned. Some of the most important, seen by many as controversial aspects are missed out. On the Shia side of things, with all the due respect, many things are taken for granted. There is an effort to write with the purpose of writing something for blessing or out of love, but not something which is trying to make a case. And even if a case is being made, it is made from resources which are restricted to the Shia own tradition. Again, I'm generalizing. I don't want to throw every other book under the bus just because I've written something in a different way, but that was the general impression I had. And also, when many Western scholars would ask about these issues, and especially we would quote letter of Malik al-Ashtar and other things, and people would say, is there a good biography? And all I could refer to were translated biographies into English, which were good but not very good. So there was a gap. And last but not the least, which you very kindly mentioned all my details about my profession as an academic on security issues. I was seeing this trend that in the last 20 years or so, Islam has been projected and thought about as a problem issue. In the Western world, and most of the Muslims have been either apologetic or defensive, trying to explain, no, no, this is also a religion like Christianity or Judaism. And I thought there's a need to look at religion as religion without trying to being defensive or apologetic, and be very clear about the great personalities of Islam which inspired it, which nurtured it, which groomed it. So it is out of these two kind of realizations that I came to a point where I thought I need to write this not as a analytical story or a revisionist history, but simply a story. And I thought of no one else but Imam Ali alayhi salam to help me in this endeavor to project Islam as it truly is.
Thank you. And that's actually amazing, because as I was reading through your book, it was amazing how lots of times we're used to hearing narrations about our imams in merely just the spiritual sense. And we seldom kind of delve deeper into how they were as leaders of society that brought together both politics and the importance of spirituality into leading the masses. And so I think that was one thing that really stood out. And moving on to another one of our introductory questions, I think you also mentioned part of this, but what was your ultimate goal from writing this book? And why do you think it's so important for us to engage and invest in academic representations of Shia studies? Why do you think that's also necessary?
Thank you so much. One of the major reasons was to write something in a way, with, especially as an academic, through sources which borrow, if not equally, but almost from both traditions, both major traditions. We at times simplify the Muslims being divided into in the Shia and Sunni. There are so many Shia schools of thought, the Ismaili and Zaydis and so many others, the Sufis, or among the Shia tradition, the Urafa, Irfan, those who believe in that, or Sufi tradition, which is a huge tradition among the Sunni Muslims. And their views cannot be compared with the Salafi or Wahhabi school of thought within the Sunni tradition. There's a huge gap between the Sufi tradition and the Wahhabi or Salafi tradition within Sunni Islam. So my purpose was, at least I should be able to respond to the challenges produced by many of these groups, how they vary, and how a person belonging to any of these traditions can at least read something, go to the references, look at the bibliography, and find their own resources as well. So in most cases, I realized everything that most Shia Muslims believe are also mentioned in Sahih Sitta, the Sunni Hadith books. Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, most of all, Sunan Nisa'i, one of the 6 central books, or the Imams in the Sunni tradition, the 4 major traditions of Hanafi, Hanbali, Maliki, and Shafi'i. For instance, in the Shafi'i tradition, Imam Shafi'i had said things about Imam Ali, which was amazing. When someone would question him, it appears, Shafi'i, you love Ali so much. He said, yes, I do. Call me Shia, call me Rafidi, whatever you want to call me. But if loving Ali is a problem, let me be seen as a problematic. So I wanted to bring all those traditions so that to the West, we are not calling it the Shia version of Islam or the Sunni version of Islam. It so often happens that within the Sunni tradition, for good reasons in their own view, every book is Islam's political system, Islamic political thought, Islamic worldview, whereas actually it is Sunni worldview. And the Shia, there's a tendency among scholars always trying to not necessarily intentionally isolate, but always calling everything which their perspective is Shia perspective. What I learned was that historically, there were no such divisions, or such divisions were there for a different point of view, but not always to conflict with each other. Not meant that someone will go on this path X and someone will go on path Y, a path Y. And that's why we have boxed our thinking and our perspectives in a way that there's no common ground left. So the short answer is there is this search for common ground, and I found it so much open in front of us. We just have to step onto it, and that was one of the missions in this effort.
Thank you. And I think it's a breath of fresh air in some ways to see that these kinds of efforts are being undertaken, and really quality academic works that are being published in important places that are really addressing this. So thank you for that. And I think we're going to continue on into your great book. And I'm going to start off with a question that really targets the importance and the immense value that you have given when it comes to discussing the characteristics of Imam Ali as it came to leading society, but also to the times when he wasn't the caliph of the time, and in some ways was still executing his role as the Imam of the time. So you mentioned that two qualities defined Imam Ali more than anything else, and these two were his sense of justice and his forgiveness. And so my question is, how did he manage to implement what you call an unflinching sense of justice in a society while also being full of the forgiveness that you mentioned?
First, I must thank you and your other colleagues for a very deep reading of the book. And this question could only be asked by someone who has had a deep reading and deep thinking about it. So I'm really grateful to you.
Thank you.
One issue that I was made aware of is that most of the books on Imam Ali alayhi salam uh, focus either on the early period when Imam Ali was growing up. Of course, from day one, he was born in Kaaba and he opens up his eyes in the hands of the Prophet. So it's a love story in that sense. It's a story of courage when every battle, every crisis, Imam Ali is always the first one. And when the verses, the divine interjections come in, it's so often in praise of Ali, whether it is about the prayer and bowing down, or being called Wali, or is it about called being Khair al-Bariyya, or is it about any of the other great statements from the Prophet, whether Ali is to me what Aaron is to Moses, or Man kuntu Mawla fahaza Aliyun Mawla. And so these are all from the initial period, or the narrative jump to when the last 4 years when Imam Ali was the caliph. In between the passing away of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our beloved Prophet, and Imam Ali taking over as the caliph, are 25 years. In an total age of 63 or 62, 25 years of history are almost missed by the Sunni school of thought because of a variety of other reasons. There was so much happening among the during the times of the first three caliphs, uh, Abu Bakr, Umar, and Usman. And in the Shia tradition, it is missed because there's more emphasis, rightly so in some cases, in the early period when Ali is walking side by side with the Prophet. In every major Islamic move, Imam Ali is next to the Prophet. You will not find many others. All important companions all together never spent as much quality time with the Prophet as Ali did alone. And it was not because he was his son-in-law or cousin. There was more to it, much more to it. So what happened in those 25 years is extremely important to understand and not covered. And what I have figured out, one is out of facts which are available in the books, and a couple of things which I just hint for researchers, which are somewhat different than what even the Shia believe in. But I thought as a scholar I have to point out those. But first, answering your question, in those 25 years, especially when I mentioned I was looking at the idea of forgiveness, because without that, things would have been very hard for him, in a sense that he was very clear that Imam Ali's right was taken away. I think Najul Balagha makes it clear. There's no two views about it. As soon as Saqifa happened, which was the Saqifa, for those may not know in your audience, is the point where the Prophet passes away. There is a political settlement of sorts. I call it a backroom deal as well. But nonetheless, tribal chiefs were there. What was decided in that small group, in the choice of Abu Bakr, a close companion and friend of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is picked up and then later on accepted by a majority. That's the truth. There's no other way to put it. And at that time, Imam Ali, who had been at the forefront of the Islamic movement, um, any ordinary person would have felt isolated, humiliated. Some people project Imam Ali as that, and I have very serious concerns about it. Anyone who projects Imam Ali, this was a crowning moment also. He was never mentioned or projected as as a political leader necessarily. However, his imamat was all linked to idea of spiritual inheritance, and he was the spiritual custodian of Islam after the Prophet. It was his personal responsibility to take the message further and to implement it. The Prophet had said, I am involved in the projection and bringing the religion to the people. Ali will fight the wars of Ta'wil, of the interpretations, the internal discord, and other such issues and challenges. And Imam Ali at that moment was, I believe, neither humiliated nor he was really moved. He would have been very worried man if he was politically extremely ambitious, or he wanted to push through and impose his worldview on the others and say, no, those group of people elected somebody, I'm going to take out my sword and I'm going to fight. The fact that he never did that, the fact that he never politically campaigned against them, the fact that he never challenged publicly, in a sense, in a modern sense that we see political opponents do, Imam Ali had to have this special trait of patience and forgiveness also. I understand some people, even with the Shia tradition, may have issues with that. Um, uh, but I have not seen anything which tells me that Imam Ali was not full of forgiveness. In fact, later on, when Imam Ali became caliph and there was a debate going on with Muawiyah ibn Sufyan, the autocrat, the which whom I call the leader of the anti-Islam movement, that if there was ever a counter-revolution to Islam, the Abu Sufyan family was leading it, and Muawiyah being at the forefront of it, and Yazid being the worst of it. Muawiyah wanted Imam Ali to say something terrible about the third Caliph Usman. And he said, what do you have to say about Umar Abu Bakr? And he wanted that Imam Ali says something terrible, and then he makes a political context out of it. And Imam Ali said, what you're saying about Usman, all the great things, might be true, not true. All the bad things you're saying about, I'm paraphrasing. Imam Ali said, all the terrible things you're saying about Usman um, may be true, possibly are true, but God is full of forgiveness. But he said, so I'm not going into a debate with Usman is better or I am better. He said, I know that on the day of judgment, I am very confident that for those who are the closest to the Prophet, I'll be standing with them. Or Imam Ali was very clear who at the end of the day is going to be seen as closest to the Prophet and following the path of that tradition and maintaining successfully the custodianship of Islam after the Prophet. So I've just mentioned one example. It's a big topic of what happened in those 25 years, but Imam Ali always helped whenever he was asked to. That's why second Caliph, Umar, who had many credits due to him for his military campaigns. No one can deny that. He was a good administrator as well. We must accept it. However, whenever he faced a challenge, whether it was in Islamic law, it was about the interpretation of the Quran, it was about any complicated issue, he would call on Imam Ali. And Imam Ali never kept his wisdom to himself. That's the role of an Imamat. That could not have happened unless Imam Ali was really, really believed in forgiveness, or otherwise he would have kept a grudge. And those among us Imam Ali at the end of the day is a human being, a very special human being, was a human being. If he had kept those grudges, he would not have been able to present or provide the kind of leadership through wisdom, through articulation of great ideas, through his sermons, through great decisions that ultimately he did. So Imam Ali kept believing in that idea of forgiveness, and Umar had to say, uh, I think 9 times he said, I would have been a dead man if Ali was not there. And if actually major Sunni sources quote him 9 times, it might be actually 39 times what I'm saying, and only 9 were quoted because many biased people had taken those out. Umar also said, I am worried about the day when I face a huge challenge and Ali is not there to rescue me. Same is with other people. So that's one facet. And very briefly, I figured out, and I'll start with an example. We often say, Mr. X, he has lived all his life in Boston. And yes, he traveled once to New York, and that's about it. And somebody else you'll say, um, Mr. Y has traveled to 30 different US states. Or then you'll say, yes, he's been to Europe, he has been to Africa. So often we think of the person who has traveled around the world as having the wisdom and having the exposure in an international sense. So how come it is possible that Imam Ali, who we are saying was one of the wisest men ever lived after the Prophet, whose ideas and whose virtues and whose perspective is global, and if together we have to really look forward to the future of Islam, it is the ideals and of Imam Ali that are important. And that person, all what he did was lived between two cities of Medina and Kufa. Impossible. Imam Ali traveled around the world. How I prove it? I cannot prove it from the Shia set of books or the Sunni set of books or some other books which by Western scholars. But I went to Turkmenistan and found traces of that. I met many people there who have. There's a strong tradition in Turkmenistan. There's a small town Ali in the close to their capital city Ashgabat, where they say Imam Ali lived there. They still in all tradition go there. I've discussed that briefly in the book. Also about other places, Pakistan-Afghanistan border. There's a place called Ali Mosque. So many other places. I have concluded that most certainly during those 25 years, Imam Ali traveled a lot as well, because that traveling and those Sunnis within the Sunni tradition, those 12 schools of Sunni school of thought and some in Irfan, their first principle of Sufism and mysticism, I should say, especially Sufism, creates many issues for many people who are very, very religious. So, not that I am trying to be extra careful. Let's call it Irfan, let's call it mysticism. They believe that the first principle of their mysticism is not only linked to Imam Ali's love, but also it is linked to traveling. Imam Ali, I'm pretty sure traveled, or this is my theory, or I want some people, young, brilliant scholars like you, to work further on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think following up on your responses, which are relevant, related to just how exactly Imam Ali conducted his own caliphate, both before being appointed as the fourth caliph and during it. So one thing that really was interesting to me was while Imam Ali was also restrained himself despite the injustices that were going on against him, he was also very steadfast in making sure that his duties were executed properly. So to follow up on that, the Shia do believe that Imam Ali restrained himself, even though there was lots of injustice against him and his family. And this was also in relation to Fadak, which was taken away from Bibi Fatima, and also a range of other things that were done against him and his family. Namely also getting the caliphate taken away from him. So this happened because the Prophet, and he was patient throughout all of this because the Prophet had told him in his parting words to be patient when he was facing these extreme challenges that would follow. So how would you say Imam Ali maintained that balance between being patient, but also making sure his duties as the Prophet's rightful heir were still carried out?
Very important questions, and I'll pick two or three strains out of this to make my point. Without a doubt, a person of Imam Ali's caliber and stature had to go through tests as well. This is a principle of nature, and Imam Ali had to go through the toughest tests, and that's why when on his final day when he is hit by Ibn Muljam, the first words or the final words I should say they came out of him were by the Lord of Kaaba, I have succeeded. Fustu bi Rabbil Kaaba. Uh, Because he knew that these challenges were huge for any human being. But I'll give one example to explain my point. Political office was never his goal. It made no impact. And this is another way I emphasize this, and it is debatable. And we have to make our own history debatable as well to fully understand it. Imam Ali, it would have not any impact on Imam Ali's teachings, ideals, and his responsibilities, even if he had not become the caliph. That's my point, and why I say that. If it was so extremely important, then Imam Ali would have fought for it. And he would have made it a point, and he had said that. Imam Ali very clearly, we find this reference. He had said that if it was not for the guidance I had received and the test of patience that I had to give, I would have overturned the tables. And I mentioned that quote in the book. Initially, he had said. But think about it. If Imam Ali had to fight his way, kill a few people, that would have led to division. And if this family was of Ahlul Bayt were concerned about one thing, the central thing, it was about the sanctity of Islam. It was about, remember that story when Imam Ali was brought with two women, both claimed they were the mothers of this one infant child, and Imam Ali said, "Okay, bring me a sword," and he said, "Okay, I'm going to cut that baby into half." Sorry for putting it like that, but and the real mother immediately stood up. She said, "No, there's no problem. Give it to the other person. She's her mom." And Imam Ali said, "No, the person who's saying it is the mom." Why? Because he knew those who really own, who's the real mother, would like to save. Because Imam Ali was the real custodian and the inheritor and successor and heir of the Prophet, he said, "Okay, I'm ready to sacrifice. If political office is something that is important in the eyes of the people, I'm not interested." When we often mention only Saqifa, what had happened was that when the first caliph died, he nominated Umar as the caliph. We find no reference except one statement, which is a one incomplete sermon that we have. There's no other mention, to the best of my knowledge, and I've struggled hard to find it, where Imam had said this nomination is wrong. Not that Imam Ali agreed with that nomination, but he never again fought it. When the third opportunity came, when Umar was dying and he nominated this group, a committee, Imam Ali participated in it out of because it was needed. A golden opportunity from his perspective came to him when he was asked, because even though that committee was biased, that committee was tilted in favor of Uthman very clearly, and I think I have no reluctance in saying there was a political agenda there. And by the way, many of these things we can discuss always without being hard or abusive or being extremely critical. And that's why I may say many a times differences happen and we can't find common ground because we use hard words which offend people. Um, no one loved Ali or hate Ali because in most cases today, tell me how many people are converts. Shias are Shias and Sunnis are Sunnis because they are born there. So irrespective of which side you are be humane to the other side and not be offensive to the other side. So the point I'm making, when that happened with Usman, uh, a final moment came that despite their political maneuvering, Imam Ali was asked this question because they knew of his status and his caliber, and he was asked, if you agree to follow God's instructions and the Prophet's guidance and the statements or precedents of the first and second caliph, if Imam Ali had said yes to all these questions, there was no way out, despite that political gambling or political manipulation, that Imam Ali's right would have been given. And Imam Ali said, I will follow God's instructions, of course. I will follow the Prophet. I cannot guarantee. He didn't say, I hate the first two caliphs. I'm not going to follow anything they do. All that they did was terrible. None of such words were uttered by Imam Ali. He said, I cannot guarantee that I'm going to follow the first two because it's not a biased thing that Imam Ali hated everything that the first two did. He would have stood up. He would not have been a legitimate Imam if he had kept quiet, if major transgressions were happening. And Imam Ali explained it at that point to Usman. They said, okay, Usman is picked up. He said, fine. Imam Ali never fought it. Or except one thing he said. He said, look, that's absolutely fine. You have picked Usman. I'll go with that. However, I am going to stay quiet only till the time that the only injustice is about me, which was he was saying, it's my right you have taken away. It's an injustice being committed. Okay, no problem. I'm ready to forgo. I'm ready to leave that. However, I'm not going to let go if the principles of Islam are being violated. All what mattered for Imam Ali was what the if there were any violations, and that was a principle I think during the first two caliphates as well. That if something would have gone terribly wrong, he would have taken up arms or he would have taken a stand in a different way. Because as an Imam, this was the responsibility. I'm probably saying some of these things too strongly or in a sweeping sentence. There's any scholar would, and I'm already thinking of counter argument to my points. And some of on those points, there's a more nuance perhaps. But in a limited section, limited conversation of this type, I think the point I'm making is Imam Ali believed in forgiveness. He believed in the essence and spirit of Islam. He was, I'll not use the word compromise. I would use the word patience. I would use the word a strategy not based on, God forbid, on lying or on giving a wrong impression, but staying quiet. But that was the test. That's the test Imam Ali had to go through, and that was very hard because my final example is when Imam Ali finally people rushed to his door, and that moment after Usman's death, that was a very interesting moment where everyone in Medina rushing to Imam's door proved one thing as well. This never happened in the case of first three caliphs, that everyone would come to them to come to one of them. If there was one totally open, transparent, massive mandate, it was given to Imam Ali. And I say this without any sectarian bias or baggage, and I'm ready to debate it with anyone. The support that Imam Ali got when he became caliph was unprecedented. And that too, Imam Ali declined. He said, I'm not interested. I have seen references, Talha and Zubair, who later on created huge issues, came to Imam Ali in the second kind of wave and said, no, no, it's a crisis. There's a almost civil war is happening. There's a huge crisis, a political vacuum. Please become caliph. Imam Ali said, no, why don't you pick one of you among yourselves to be the caliph? And I have worked with the others also. I promise I'll help you. Imam Ali was not giving a deceptive answer. He really meant it. And that is my point to prove. Political office was not Imam's goal. That is not a justification for others to take that away from Imam. I'm not saying that. The others, everyone will have to be answerable for their own conduct. But Imam Ali was not interested in getting a political office or a position because it didn't matter to him. What mattered to him, he was fully capable of, and that's what the later Imams also mentioned and proved that they were prophets. Whether prophets ever asked that they have to be head of the state? How many prophets were head of the state? I'm emphasizing this point also because this leads both the Shia and the Sunni and the others to come to a common point and not dwell too much to a point on this debate that they lose the essence of Islam. At the end of the day, probably I'm going beyond my mandate. I don't have the kind of uh, degree or the qualification to comment in a religious sense. But I would say at the end of the day, on the day of judgment, we will be asked about our view on Ahl Bayt and Imam Ali and about all what we have done. I very much doubt we'll be asked about our political position about Saqifa or our political position about some of the other issues which have become very controversial. So, not to throw those on the side, we need to know those issues. That's why I thought I cannot write a biography of Imam Ali without talking about these issues, but always give margin to a different view of history as well. And we can do that if we are clear on the principles of Imam Ali. So it's not the political battles which are important, but these are the principles. And Imam Ali stood by those principles. And today we are talking about those principles. Can you show me any other companion of the Prophet among the caliphs or otherwise who is loved and appreciated so widely? Even among the Sunni Muslims, you ask them, give me 10 statements from the four caliphs. They'll probably be able to give you 8 out of Imam Ali because that's what through Najul Balagha is available there. You ask any of these mystical songs and the Urafa and all those who love the Ahlul Bayt, their love for Imam Ali, and which I emphasize, irrespective of any sectarian identity, is so widespread. That's why it is around him that the future of Islam has to come around his teachings because he was the truest of the reflection of the Prophet. And that is what counts the most at the end of the day. Sorry for a longish answer, but the question was so important I had to give a detailed answer.
No, thank you so much. And actually, my next question is kind of based on one of the things you have emphasized, and that is even though Imam Ali, his right was taken away from him, he was still very much of use to even the caliphs. And like you said, they had mentioned repeatedly that, and I believe this was Uthman who mentioned if it wasn't for Imam Ali, he wouldn't have basically been able to continue, especially when it came to matters related to justice. So my question is, this was particularly emphasized in the Battle of Siffin as well, when Muawiyah's men put the Qur'ans on the spears. And this is where Imam Ali was faced with, enemies that presented themselves as friends oftentimes, and in some ways took advantage of Islam to further their own political agendas. And this was seen as well with Muawiyah. But he was also faced with, in some cases, extremists who declared themselves as righteous, and I mean the Khawarij here, but committed murders and heinous crimes openly. So can you expand a little bit on what specific strategies Imam Ali used, given that he had enemies with different qualities? How did he manage to deal with them in specific ways, so that there wouldn't be damage brought upon, the whole, his leadership and the society?
Thank you so much for another very thoughtful question. I think that was the true test of his leadership. And at times we think there was a reason why Imam Ali was the fourth caliph, because he had to clean up everything basically. The initial three caliphs, giving due acknowledgement to some of the important things they did in terms of building a new administration, building a new political system was not easy. Expanding the frontiers of Islam, there were so many battles, and I often mention that, for instance, although it was a very indicative point, that Imam Ali never fought any of the wars, never participated in any of those three wars. So that tells us something, and our larger, broader Muslim audience, including Sunni Muslims, should think about it. Why those who think that there was no problem or issue at all between the caliphs, it's good for a political point to say that, but the reality is that the fact that Imam Ali never fought, and he was the bravest of the brave, and he was the closest of the Prophet's companions, who were the chief warriors of the military leader. Why he never participated? But also we know that Malik al-Ashtar was the closest friend of Imam Ali, about whom Imam Ali had said, Malik al-Ashtar is to me what I was to the Prophet. That's a very important statement. We know of Hazrat Salman Farsi as well. Or I'm just returning from Iraq, so I remember I mentioned 2 days ago Salman al-Farsi, and I was corrected Salman Arabi. I said, well, whether you're an Arab or whosoever, my dear friend, Salman was from Faris. So there's he should be called, some people then say Salman Muhammadi also. But the point I'm making is that the closest of Imam Ali's companions, Hazrat Salman Farsi, remained governor also of Madain, where he's buried. A beautiful new shrine that is being built there. I had the great honor to visit that place. They worked, and many others worked very closely with the other caliphs. So it was not a political camp for Imam Ali, which was on the side. I think his greatest asset of Imam Ali was that through tribalism, through political greed, everyone or many of the major players tried to sideline him, tried to really put him down. And he stood with his character above everyone else. And at the end of the day, for any objective reader, no one else can be compared with Imam Ali, because he had the courage, not only courage, and also the capacity of forgiveness, but his clarity of thought on the central principles of Islam, of egalitarianism, of pluralism. He would offer help to anyone, irrespective of whether that person was supporting him or not. When Imam Ali was the caliph, he made many appointments. Some of those had held important positions with the first three caliphs. Imam Ali never said, oh, you were my political opponent, I'm not going to give you an appointment. It is through pursuance of merit and professionalism in our modern sense. That was the central criterion for Imam Ali, not the person likes or dislikes. And some of the most important people with Imam Ali had played an important role during the first three caliphs as well. After all, the whole Imam Ali's close cabinet, if I call that, they were not remained isolated. Some different cases like Abu Zar Ghaffari, I think one of the finest of the companions of the Prophet as well as of Imam Ali, that he was very outspoken. He had challenged the political elite. But Imam Ali was very clear, and 2 or 3 points to explain this. Yes, think of this. First, he has the huge challenge from within the family. Important wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is the one who's working with the two of the closest companions. Zubair and Talha were not ordinary people. Zubair was the one when right after Saqifa, those few people who stood by Imam Ali, including Zubair. So Zubair sided with, it needed courage at that time. There were hardly, some people say 25 major companions, some say more, but those who were coming regularly to the Imam Ali's house for condolence and for showing their solidarity after Saqifa, Zubair was among them. We cannot just negate people's life and contributions in one go. Even when Zubair fought Imam Ali, it was not Imam Ali's. So the wife of the Prophet, Zubair and Talha, and they have a huge army who were saying Imam Ali has to be answerable for the killing of Usman, and he should arrest the person who was involved. And they were indirectly hinting at Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr and many of the others, Malik al-Ashtar, who had challenged the third caliph very clearly. They were saying, Imam Ali, your friends are the ones who killed. And Imam Ali had explained, I had nothing to do with it. And the wife of the Prophet, Aisha, she was involved in, people believe, in raising awareness about the third caliph's controversial decisions. And Imam Ali was very clear at that time. When he faced this huge challenge, what he did in the battlefield, when Zubair came to him as an opponent, Imam Ali didn't just take sword and fought him. Imam Ali reminded him, do you remember, Zubair? There was a time in our childhood when our dear Prophet, our beloved Prophet, had said that one day you will both fight each other, and that day Ali will be on the right. Don't you remember? And Zubair, after some thinking, said, you're right. And he backed off. He was killed in the battlefield by Marwan. The point I'm making, it needed a huge wisdom, patience, perseverance. Imam Ali was the caliph. Same with Khawarij. Khawarij is very important. I'll spend maybe a couple of minutes on that. Khawarij is so important because Khawarij are the founders of the today's Daesh and Al Qaeda and Taliban and whatnot in the extremist movements. They were the first rigid Muslims, inverted commas, who were saying, we will do takfir. Everyone else who has a different opinion is not a Muslim. We are the ones who are the real Muslims. And how Imam Ali dealt with them? Imam Ali allowed them to speak in Masjid Kufa. People could say, Imam, these were Imam Ali's opponents, and Imam Ali's closest friends said to him, don't allow them to speak. Imam Ali said no. And that's the point when Imam Ali was often saying, I'm sitting on this pulpit, I'm accountable to you. I'm answering. When Imam Ali said, ask me a question you want to ask. In the Shia tradition and in the Sunni also, this is often mentioned as something that Imam Ali has great knowledge in. He was saying, ask me a thing about under the sun. True, that was also the meaning. However, there was more meaning to it. Imam Ali was saying, I am sitting here answerable to you and accountable to you. Because his first statement after becoming caliph was, I have rights on you, you have rights on me. So Imam Ali was very transparent, open, and even when he fought Khawarij, in many cases he said there should be a funeral because these are the people who deviated because they were shown a wrong path. Look at his forbearance. Look at his compassion. Is that visible today about those Muslims who think of the other as the total opponent? It was a new model of governance and of compassion that Imam Ali gave. The third with Muawiyah. Now Muawiyah is whom I call the biggest challenger, the head of the counter-revolution to Islam. Muawiyah was not a mere political opponent of Imam Ali. Muawiyah is the one who created a brand of politics which today is seen in Middle East and other parts of the Muslim world through authoritarianism, through bigotry, through political manipulation, through greed, through monarchy. If there's one founder of all these five traits, it is Muawiyah ibn Sufyan. For Imam Ali to deal with him? One was a political strategy. He moved the various reasons people give why Imam Ali moved the capital from Medina to Kufa, but maybe one reason was he was trying to defy potentially what Muawiyah could do by blocking some of the trade routes, by ensuring that there'll be no bloodbath in Medina, the city of the Prophet. And there can be other reasons as well, but Imam Ali made some strategic decisions. His communication with Muawiyah it's so obvious and so insightful about the principles. So dealing with these three kind of enemies from within, this was the most treacherous moment for Islam. this was the most difficult moment for Islam. I think Imam Ali was kept for that moment. The Islam would not have survived. And we saw one side of that through Yazid, how distorted, how the principles were distorted. And there again, Imam Hussein, what he did was not only out of his sense of what the right thing had to be done, but that is what was taught to him by Imam Ali. So Imam Hussein, what he did in Karbala is also a reflection of the principles of Imam Ali. Whatever Imam Ali did was a reflection of what they had learned from the great prophet. So this train of the great personalities are the reason that Islam came to us the way it is, the greatest of all religions for the end times as well. And that's what we need to even research more. We need to think about more what Imam Ali did when he was the caliph, because that tells us at the issue of compromise or not, how do you adjust, how there has to be a certain nuance, how you have to take middle path in certain cases, how you have to first forgive, how you continue to pursue justice, and how you always, this one last point, all the sermons of Imam Ali that I read, all the other statements that I had a chance to read, there's one common theme which so often among the scholars is not emphasized enough, I think. It is the welfare of the people. Always. In fact, I was recently, when I was in Iraq, the last about 2 weeks or so, I had the great chance to meet some scholars, and we were discussing about Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Sistani's worldview, and I was asking them how many of his statements, many of his policy directives are not following what Baghdad, the politicians in Baghdad want, but he's always very pro people, the pro poor, and I heard from scholars, which I already had mentioned the book, but I wanted to know more about it, how it is the welfare of the people, which is the prime concern of the leading Shia scholars, especially the Grand Ayatollah Ali Sistani and others as well. So it is the welfare of the people. It is whether it is letter to Malik al-Ashtar, it is about justice, it is about equality. Imam Ali was never saying justice for those who are with us or justice for the Muslims only. The final statement of Imam Ali, when he's hit over his head, he's giving his final will to Imam Hassan, he says something so powerful and so monumental, I believe. And by the way, that was almost identical to what the Prophet had said when he was in his final moments with his head in Imam Ali's lap. Both of them, the Prophet in his final moments, Imam Ali in his final moments, said, take care of the weak among you and the dhimma, which was those who were at that time, the minority was Christian and Jews. So I say this to my Christian Jewish friends also. In the final moments, Imam Ali had time to mention 3 or 4 things to Imam Hassan. And one of those was, take care of the rights of those who are not Muslims. And at that time, there was not a large non-Muslim population. So the principle of humanity, that's why Imam Ali's most popular statement, which actually when Pope also visited Iraq and Sayyid Ali Sistani, it was mentioned, and I saw this at the time, this time when I was returning, big posters at the airport. Imam Ali's most famous quote, I would say, people are of 2 kinds. Either you are my brother, or I should say sister, in faith, or brother or sister in humanity. So it is that criterion of a human being. And what we have brought Islam to, we are all very, very judgmental. We always judge the other. Oh, the person belongs to my sect or not. The person belongs to the specific variation of Islam that I believe or not. The person is a Muslim or it's from a different religion about whom I have a certain view. Islam has not allowed us or not prepared us to be judgmental or always judging people in this way. It wants us to judge everyone as a human being. That was the core principle of Imam Ali. I actually was doing a word search. I converted the whole Imam Ali's all statements into a Word document. I was searching for words. And I was amazed at the number of times he mentions welfare of the people, welfare of the people. And that's exactly what modern Muslim leaders, political leaders care about at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to focus on one part of your answer that you really emphasized, and it was this idea of the specific mode of governance that Imam Ali had, and how it was in stark contrast to general modes of governance that we see that are more rooted in power and greed than they are in the welfare of the people. And so, what I want to ask is, Imam Ali, while he was society's leader, and he did have that immense power in his hands, he was also, like you said, this extremely humble person who lived the most simple life among everyone among him, and he also always aligned himself with the underprivileged. So, kind of tying it back to today and more modern discussions, would you say that his mode of governance could be regarded as a model whereby healthy, just societies can be run? And if you think so, do you think it's possible to replicate the principles by which he ran that society in today's world?
Thank you very much. One, I think that Imam Ali's model is extremely relevant to today in this world where polarization defines us. Whether in United States you see the right and the left, or any of the other countries, the conservatives and the liberals, or people the way they have framed their identities in so many ways which conflict with each other. It is about the negation of the other that defines you. That's the new way, and that's exactly something that Imam Ali faced, and Imam Ali was able to challenge that. But his governance model, the very first day he becomes caliph, and that too, as I had explained, after people really went after him, he never said, "Okay, I am ready to accept caliph, this title." He said, "Okay, everyone, let's go to the mosque and rethink." There he asked everyone, so all of you are here, and a great majority of the people, they all stood by Imam Ali. Right after that, he made an amazing sermon, which I couldn't find in one place, and I collected bits and pieces from all different sources. And in the book, I mentioned that as one sermon, but I borrowed it from different sources. Imam Ali is saying, from today onwards, everyone is equal before me. He was not saying Bani Hashim, whom the Shia and we in our tradition and others put on a very high pedestal, rightly so for other reasons. Imam Ali never said Bani Hashim is going to have a privileged position. He said no privilege by any ethnic, political, or a tribal group. And he said, even if you have taken somebody's rights, even if that has been given as a dowry and the people it has transferred to a third family, I'm going to take every bit of that back and put it in the treasury. The second principle is followed. He said, state is not going to amass wealth and keep everything. He said, I don't know, it was weekly or monthly, but he said, everything that the state has is going to be distributed among the people equally. And one of the reasons why even those who signed on to his caliphate ultimately then in few months challenged him, because Imam Ali had said no privileges. During the time of the second caliph, Quraysh started receiving extra benefit. All those who had fought in the Badr, it was a policy decision by second caliph, who said all those who had fought in Badr were extremely important Muslims. They were early Muslims. They will get more honorarium or more monthly stipend. Imam Ali said, no, everyone is going to receive equal amount. To give credit where due, the first caliph Abu Bakr had also followed this policy to the best of my knowledge where I have read it. So Imam Ali is saying everyone is equal. This is the justice system. Imam Ali was told that for political reasons, he should kept some of the governors, including Muawiyah. And Imam Ali said, no, what is right and what is wrong is wrong. I'm not going to allow Muawiyah to be a caliph for a single day. Ibn Abbas, one of his first cousins, one of the very close associates who helped Imam Ali greatly, who had good relations with other three caliphs as well as advisor, he said to Imam Ali, please, let's wait. Allow me to strategize it. I will go to Muawiyah. Let's keep him. You should strengthen your base. When you have established your writ of state, then we will see Muawiyah. Imam Ali said, no. Imam Ali, with his wisdom, knew it is going to lead to a major war. But Imam Ali never wanted to project that he would compromise on basic principles. I think that's the message. That's the model. Today we often say it's politics. The president is not following, let's say we often say the Bernie Sanders model because it's not possible. It is not politically viable. In Imam Ali's world, no. Principles matter the most. Justice matters the most. The poorer you are, the more important you are to the caliph. Imam Ali would wear certain clothes which were worn by the very poor. And one of Imam Ali's friends said, brought him clothes, a special dress. And Imam Ali said, no. Then that person started wearing those kind of clothes. Imam Ali said, why are you wearing these torn clothes? And he said, because you are wearing. Imam Ali said, I am different because I am the caliph. I have to keep my living standard equal to what the most poor have. Have you seen today? I mean, in some European countries, yes, I see some of the prime ministers cycling. I think they are following Imam Ali actually more than Middle East and South Asia or the Muslim states. Those prime ministers who do things which they do, which the very, very ordinary are doing on daily basis. That's Imam Ali's model. Imam Ali's model is that of love for the orphans. The day Imam Ali's uh, died later on, there were so many poor people who would knock on the door of Imam Hassan. And Imam Hassan and the family realized that even they, as family members, were not aware of all the poor people that Imam Ali would go every night. That is Imam Ali's model of forgiveness, of love, of giving everything to the other. He Many people are not aware of this, that during the 25 years, also when among other living under other caliphs, Imam Ali was doing many things which was raising a lot of money, digging wells, his work on agriculture issues. He made a lot of money. This is an aspect which I couldn't cover in detail in the book also, but I'm mentioning is he had a lot of money. We often mention Mr. So and so had a lot of money he gave out. Imam Ali also gave maybe as much money, if not more. But at the end of the day, he was left with nothing because he kept nothing for himself. That is that is the governance model of giving, and by giving. And he had mentions and other people that during the third caliph were built. He never lived into any mansion or palace. He was not trying to recreate a Roman model. He was trying to create a Islamic Muslim model. And if the Muslim world has to go back to the principles, I think there's no better than to follow and build your model of transparency, of inclusiveness, of pluralism, about and spirituality. What connects you with God, with that transcendent reality in such a fashion that you are totally selfless, that you give everything that is yours, you share with others. That is Imam Ali's model. And that is what we will have to pursue if we want to follow the path of Islam. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And since we are almost out of time, just one last question. This is from one of our guests who are here today. They're saying, thank you, Doctor, for shedding light on the valuable attributes of Imam Ali. As Muslim activists who live in the West, what can we learn from Imam Ali to ensure ending discrimination against Muslims and our rights obtained under the rule of law?
Thank you so much for honestly for Muslims uh, to ensure that their rights are fulfilled. If I am a Muslim activist today, and I would like to be, and I do in my humble, limited way, I would start by standing for rights of the others. How many of the Muslims were standing for Black Lives Matter? How many of the Muslims were standing in America for so many of the other issues? Very seldom. I don't see Muslims, not that I'm saying because I am there and I watch, but I watch it on television, always look for Muslim faces. Um, a person who believes in the Imam Hussein alayhi salam's vision and sacrifice and is not ready to help the other, those who are in extreme distress, um, is not following Imam Hussein's path. So you'll first, as an activist, the activism is not about your own community. Then you are you are a community activist. If you really want to be an activist in the sense of Islamic activism, it is about standing by other people's right. It is about helping the poor. It is about standing for those for whom no one else is standing. That's where activism has started. And then others will stand with you. If you are standing, you are the only one who's standing for your own rights, then it's not wrong, but it's not going to go very far. You'll have to present what you believe in for every human being, not only even Muslim. Only then people will see, because then they will stop and they will ask you, what worldview these people are from, what ideology they follow. And this, in this global age when Muslim, to be a Muslim was projected as if that is a crime. It has security reasons, it has political reasons, it has some issues of assimilation at a lower level, but by and large, We have to be part of the societies we live in. We have to contribute to those societies. At the end of the day, how many hospitals we have built? I'll not say compare that with building mosques, but all the mosques we have, can't we also establish small libraries in those on Islam? Let's don't say we'll pick books on mass movements. Each of our center, and I say this to Imam and to Sheikh Mufid seminary as well, join me in this effort. Humbly, I had started talking to many people. Every Islamic center, as Shia Islamic center that you have access to, you have influence over, start one room small library, announce to that community you're living in, anyone you want to read a book on Islam, and keep books on all Islam, Shia, Sunni, Sufi, Irfan, everything. And tell the local community people, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, please come and borrow a book, any book that you want. This idea of public service, we have to link this, because we invest a lot in building Islamic centers, which is great. But in comparison to other charity work, in comparison to hospitals, in comparison to schools, how many chairs, by the way, we have built? This is a question for all people in this group and those who will hear this later on. There's not a single Imam Ali chair. How much it costs to establish a chair in an Ivy League? 2 million, 3 million, the most. You go to Harvard today and say, we want to build an Imam Ali chair. These are the criterion. They will not pick. If you'll say, we want Mr. X to be established, they will say, no, we will have our own criterion. We will establish a chair based on our own standards. And they will follow their merit. You can rest assured. That's why those are top universities. But they'll say, okay, give us an endowment of 3 million, 4 million, 5, huge money, 5 million. I can tell you tens of Islamic centers in America, which are all built for more than $5 million. I'm not saying don't build it. In major town, if in Chicago, there are 9 major Islamic centers, for God's sake, think about Islamic chair in the University of Chicago, rather than building the 10th center and trying to divide people and bring more to your center. That's the approach of public service that we'll have to follow. Sorry for being a bit hard and with strong words, but I really believe we mostly talk about Imam Ali just in slogans. We use it for our own emotionalism when it comes to, and I quoted something in my speech in Najaf 2 days ago, and I'll conclude with that. Imam Ali's most famous statement, one of the most famous, or I like it very much, I should say, is a quote in Nahj al-Balagha where he said, knowledge and action go hand in hand. Wherever there is knowledge, it should reflect in the shape of action. If knowledge will not be converted into action, then God will take away that knowledge from you. I slightly tweak it by saying, love of Imam Ali and acting on his wisdoms go hand in hand. If you will not convert your love of Imam or Hubbe Ali into following his pathway, then fear from the day when the Hubbe Ali, the hope that you feel of love of Imam Ali, is going to go away. Because otherwise, it's just a facade. If we are not ready to follow the path of Ali and just keep on saying Ya Ali Madad and Ya Ali, then it might be something psychological and not very deep. I really feel it. I think we should all think about this. How much of this love for Ali that we claim is actually so deep rooted that it is then leading to action on Imam Ali. That's what the path should look like, following the pathway of Imam Ali. Thank you so much for this time and these questions.
Thank you, Dr. Abbas. We really enjoyed listening to your answers. It was definitely an honor speaking to you about this book. I know I personally enjoyed reading every page of it a lot, especially because it was addressing kind of a different dimension to our Imam and really helping us see a basically more 3D version of exactly how his rule was in terms of both a combination of spirituality and political leadership in his time. And really, a lot of these things are issues that we see in every society, considering that societies have very similar struggles and things. So I really appreciate that you took the time to really discuss this with us, and inshallah, we look forward to more conversations with you.
Most certainly. I'm so thankful to Imam and to the other organizers, Mufid Academy, for this opportunity, and to the moderator. You did a fantastic job, and your questions were so spot on, and you allowed me to complete my arguments. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Inshallah, we look forward to having future discussions with you.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.